The morning sun filtered through the tall windows of Kensington Palace, casting long shadows across the marble floors. Kate Middleton stood in her private sitting room, her hands trembling slightly as she held the phone. The call she had just received from the palace medical team would change everything. The words echoed in her mind like a broken record. "Your Royal Highness, we need to discuss Prince Louis's recent test results." It had started 3 weeks earlier during a routine family outing to Windsor Great Park. Louis, their youngest at just 5 years old, had complained of feeling tired. Kate had initially brushed it off as the natural exhaustion of an active child who had been running around all morning. But when he stumbled while walking back to their car, something inside her maternal instincts screamed that this wasn't normal. William had been away on official duties in Scotland that weekend, so Kate made the decision alone to call their private physician, Dr. Margaret Thornton. The doctor's calm voice had provided some reassurance initially. "Children go through phases, Your Royal Highness. Let's schedule some routine checks just to be thorough." But routine checks had turned into more specialized tests. Blood work, neurological assessments, imaging scans. Each appointment brought new questions rather than answers. Kate found herself lying awake at night, watching Louis sleep, counting each peaceful breath and wondering what tomorrow might bring. The palace had managed to keep the medical visits completely private. No photographers, no leaked information, no speculation in the press. Kate was grateful for this small mercy. But the isolation also felt overwhelming. She couldn't confide in her closest friends without risking exposure. Even her own family knew only that Louis was having some minor health checks. During those 3 weeks, Kate maintained her public schedule with remarkable composure. She attended charity events, hosted diplomatic receptions, and smiled for countless photographs. But those closest to her began to notice subtle changes. Her private secretary, Emma, observed that Kate would sometimes stare out windows longer than usual during meetings. Her lady-in-waiting, Sophie, noticed that Kate's usually perfect posture occasionally sagged when she thought no one was looking. William returned from Scotland sensing something was different the moment he walked through the door. Kate had perfected the art of royal composure over the years, but 13 years of marriage had taught William to read the tiny details others missed. The way she held her shoulders just a fraction higher than normal. How her smile didn't quite reach her eyes when she greeted him. The slight hesitation before she answered his questions about her week. That evening, after George and Charlotte had gone to bed and Louis was settled in his room, Kate finally told William everything. They sat in their private living room, the same space where they had celebrated George's first steps, where Charlotte had learned to read, where Louis had mastered tying his shoes. Now it felt different, charged with an anxiety that neither wanted to acknowledge aloud. William listened without interruption as Kate described each doctor's visit, each test, each night she had spent watching Louis sleep. When she finished, he simply took her hand and said, "We'll face whatever this is together." But Kate could see the fear in his eyes that matched her own. The next morning brought a call from Dr. Thornton requesting an immediate meeting. Kate's heart sank. Good news, she had learned, typically came over the phone. Requests for face-to-face meetings usually meant complications. They met at the private medical facility the royal family used for sensitive matters. Dr. Thornton, a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and graying hair, had been the family's physician for nearly a decade. She had delivered Louis, had treated George's broken arm, had guided them through Charlotte's bout with pneumonia when she was 3. Her steady presence had always been reassuring, but today her expression was more serious than usual. "The neurological tests have revealed some abnormalities," Dr. Thornton began carefully. "Louis appears to be developing a rare condition that affects the nervous system. It's not immediately life-threatening, but it will require ongoing treatment and monitoring." Kate felt the room spin slightly. William's hand found hers under the table and squeezed gently. She forced herself to focus on the doctor's words, to ask the questions that needed asking. "What does this mean for his future?" William asked, his voice steady despite the tremor Kate could feel in his hand. Dr. Thornton explained that the condition was manageable but would likely affect Lewis's energy levels and motor coordination. With proper treatment, he could live a relatively normal life, but certain activities might become challenging. Sports, long public engagements, even simple playground games might need to be modified or limited. As they left the medical facility, Kate and William sat in their car in silence for several minutes. Finally, Kate spoke. "We need to tell the children, and we need to decide how to handle the public aspect." The conversation with George and Charlotte that evening was one of the most difficult Kate had ever navigated. How do you explain to an 11-year-old and a 7-year-old that their baby brother has something wrong with his brain? How do you provide reassurance when you're not sure what there is to be reassured about? George, with the seriousness that had marked his personality since birth, asked practical questions about treatments and doctors. Charlotte, more emotional like her mother, wanted to know if Louis would be okay and if it was somehow her fault for the times she had been impatient with him. Louis himself seemed largely unaware that he was the center of such concern. He continued playing with his toys, building elaborate Lego structures, and pestering his siblings with the same enthusiasm as always. Kate found this both heartbreaking and somehow comforting. At least for now, his world remained unchanged. The Palace communications team was briefed on the situation, though no immediate announcement was planned. The strategy was to wait until they had a clearer picture of Lewis's prognosis and treatment plan. But Kate knew that keeping such news private indefinitely would be impossible. Someone would notice changes in Lewis's public appearances, or his absence from certain events would spark speculation. Meanwhile, Kate threw herself into research. She read every medical journal article she could find about Lewis's condition. She connected with support groups, speaking anonymously with other parents facing similar challenges. She consulted with specialists around the world, seeking second opinions and exploring treatment options. The irony wasn't lost on her that, as the future Queen of England, she had access to the best medical care in the world, yet felt just as helpless as any mother receiving frightening news about her child. Money and titles couldn't change a diagnosis or guarantee an outcome. 2 weeks after receiving the news, Kate found herself standing in the doorway of Lewis's bedroom watching him sleep. His face looked so peaceful, so normal, so beautifully unaware of the challenges that lay ahead. She thought about all the dreams she had harbored for her youngest child, all the possibilities that might now need adjustment. But as she stood there, she also felt something else growing alongside the fear and uncertainty, a fierce determination to ensure that Lewis's condition would not define him or limit his happiness. She had seen how the royal family had historically handled challenges, sometimes with grace, sometimes with unfortunate secrecy that only made things worse. She was determined to choose a different path. The following weeks brought a new routine to the Cambridge household. Louis began a treatment program that required daily medications and twice-weekly therapy sessions. Kate rearranged her entire schedule to personally drive him to appointments, unwilling to delegate such an intimate responsibility to staff. During these car rides, Louis would chatter about everything except his condition. He told Kate about the drawings he planned to make, the games he wanted to play with George, the story Charlotte had promised to read to him. His innocence and resilience both amazed and broke her heart a little more each day. Dr. Thornton had warned them that the condition might cause occasional episodes where Louis would experience sudden fatigue or mild disorientation. The first time it happened, Kate was in the middle of reviewing documents for an upcoming charity patron meeting when she heard Louis crying from the playroom. She found him sitting on the floor, surrounded by scattered puzzle pieces, tears streaming down his face. "Mummy, I can't remember how this goes together," he sobbed. I knew how to do it yesterday. But now, I can't remember. Kate knelt beside him, gathering the pieces while fighting back her own tears. This was what Dr. Thornton had described, the cognitive fog that could accompany Louis's condition. It wouldn't be permanent or severe, but it would come and go unpredictably. "It's okay, sweetheart," she said softly, pulling him into her arms. "Some days our brains just need extra help remembering things. Let's do the puzzle together, and I bet you'll remember how by the end." As they worked on the puzzle piece by piece, Kate made mental notes about what she was observing. The doctors needed detailed reports about Louis's episodes to adjust his treatment properly. But more than that, she was learning how to help her son navigate these moments without making him feel broken or different. William returned home that evening to find Kate in their bedroom, sitting at her desk with medical journals spread around her laptop. She looked up as he entered, and he could see the exhaustion in her eyes. "How was he today?" William asked gently. Kate described the puzzle incident, her voice remaining steady until she reached the part about Louis asking if his brain was broken. Then her composure finally cracked. "I didn't know what to tell him," she whispered. "How do you explain to a 5-year-old that his brain works differently without making him feel like there's something wrong with him?" William sat on the edge of the bed, pulling her close. "You tell him the truth in a way he can understand. You tell him that everyone's brain is special and unique, and his just needs a little extra help sometimes. You tell him that having challenges doesn't make you less than anyone else." That night, after tucking all 3 children into bed, Kate and William had a long conversation about the future. They discussed how Louis's condition might affect his role as a working royal, how they could prepare the public and the press for the announcement they would eventually need to make, and how they could protect their son's dignity while being honest about his challenges. The decision to gradually reduce Louis's public appearances wasn't made lightly. They had always been careful about exposing their children to too much publicity, but now they had additional reasons for caution. Long ceremonial events would be physically taxing for Louis, and the unpredictable nature of his episodes made spontaneous public engagements risky. The first event Louis missed was a traditional Christmas carol service. The palace announced that he had a minor cold, which was technically true. He had been sniffling that week. But the real reason was that Dr. Thornton had advised against the long evening event so soon after starting his medication regimen. Kate watched the news coverage of the service that night, seeing how the cameras lingered on the empty space where Louis would normally have stood between his siblings. Already, royal watchers were beginning to speculate about his absence. She knew they were entering a delicate period where the line between privacy and transparency would become increasingly difficult to navigate. The breaking point came 6 weeks later during a family photo shoot for the annual Christmas card. The photographer, a longtime royal family collaborator, was setting up shots in the palace's blue drawing room when Louis suddenly became confused and disoriented. He had been laughing with George just moments before, but suddenly he couldn't remember where he was or why there were bright lights and cameras. The episode lasted only about 10 minutes, but Kate could see the concern in the photographer's eyes and knew that word might spread despite confidentiality agreements. That evening, Kate and William made the decision they had been dreading. It was time to make a public announcement about Louis's condition. They couldn't risk having the news leak in a distorted or sensationalized way. Their son deserved better than that. The palace communications team worked around the clock to craft a statement that would be honest but protective, informative but not overly detailed. They consulted with medical experts, communication specialists, and even other families who had dealt with similar public health announcements. Meanwhile, Kate focused on preparing Louis himself. She had been gradually explaining more about his condition in age-appropriate terms, helping him understand that his brain worked differently and that the medicines and doctor visits were helping him feel better. "Am I going to be in trouble for being different?" Lewis asked one afternoon as Kate was giving him his medication. The question hit Kate like a physical blow. "Oh, sweetheart, no," she said, kneeling to his level. "Being different isn't something you get in trouble for. Different can be wonderful and special, and no matter what, Daddy and I love you exactly as you are." George and Charlotte had also been prepared for the eventual public announcement. They understood that people might ask questions about their brother, and they had practiced simple responses that protected Lewis's privacy while acknowledging his condition. The night before the announcement was scheduled to be released, Kate couldn't sleep. She wandered through the palace, eventually finding herself in Lewis's room, watching him sleep peacefully. His little face was relaxed, his breathing steady, his stuffed elephant clutched tightly to his chest. She thought about the media storm that would follow the next day's announcement. The speculation, the unwanted attention, the way Lewis's condition would become part of the public narrative about their family. She worried about how it would affect him as he grew older, whether he would resent the loss of privacy, whether the public scrutiny would make his challenges harder to bear. But she also thought about the families who would feel less alone when they learned that even royal children could face neurological challenges. She thought about the research funding that might increase when a high-profile case brought attention to Lewis's condition. She thought about the importance of showing that different doesn't mean less than. As she stood there in the darkness, Kate made a silent promise to her sleeping son. She would protect him fiercely, while also allowing him to help others simply by living his life with courage and authenticity. She would ensure that his condition never became his identity, but also that it was never hidden as if it were something shameful. The next morning would bring the palace announcement, and with it, a new chapter in their family's public life. But tonight, Lewis was simply their beautiful boy, sleeping peacefully, dreaming whatever dreams 5-year-olds dream, surrounded by love and protection and hope for whatever tomorrow might bring. The morning of the announcement arrived with unusual quiet in Kensington Palace. Kate woke early, before the children, and made her way to the kitchen to prepare breakfast personally, a ritual that grounded her during stressful times. As she arranged Lewis's medication beside his plate, she heard small footsteps padding down the hallway. Lewis appeared in the kitchen doorway, his hair tousled from sleep, dragging his beloved elephant behind him. "Morning, Mummy," he said cheerfully, completely unaware that this would be the last day his medical condition remained a private family matter. "Good morning, my darling," Kate replied, lifting him up for their daily cuddle. She breathed in the sweet scent of his hair and felt the solid warmth of his small body against hers. In a few hours, the world would know about his condition, but right now, he was simply her little boy asking for chocolate chips in his pancakes. William joined them as Kate was flipping pancakes, and she could see the tension in his shoulders despite his attempt to maintain normalcy. George and Charlotte tumbled into the kitchen shortly after, and for 30 precious minutes they were just a family having breakfast together. Laughing at George's silly joke about penguins and listening to Charlotte practice her French vocabulary words. After breakfast, while the children played in the nursery, Kate and William retreated to their private office to review the final statement one last time. The words had been carefully crafted over several days. Their Royal Highnesses, the Prince and Princess of Wales, wish to share that Prince Louis has been diagnosed with a mild neurological condition that affects his energy levels and coordination. Louis is receiving excellent medical care and is responding well to treatment. He remains a happy, active child who brings joy to his family every day. The Prince and Princess ask for privacy as they continue to support Louis through his treatment while maintaining as normal a life as possible for all their children. Kate read it through once more, her finger tracing each word. It felt both too much and not enough. Too much information for the public sphere, yet not enough to convey the full reality of their journey over the past 2 months. At 11 o'clock, The statement was released simultaneously across all official royal channels. Within minutes, Kate's phone began buzzing with messages from family, friends, and staff. She turned it face down and focused on the children, who were building an elaborate fort in the living room. The first news alert came an hour later. Kate couldn't help herself. She checked her phone to see how the story was being covered. "Palace reveals Prince Louis's health condition," read the BBC headline. Below it, "Royal family asks for privacy as youngest prince undergoes treatment." The coverage was respectful, factual, and sympathetic. Kate felt a small sense of relief. The royal press office had done their job well, providing enough information to satisfy public curiosity while maintaining appropriate boundaries. But relief was quickly replaced by anxiety as she realized this was only the beginning. Soon would come the analysis pieces, the speculation about how this would affect Louis's future role, the comparisons to other royal family members who had faced health challenges. The story would grow and evolve in ways beyond their control. That afternoon, Louis experienced one of his episodes while playing in the garden. Kate was watching from the window when she saw him suddenly stop running and sit down heavily on the grass, looking confused. By the time she reached him, George had already sat down beside his little brother, speaking to him in the gentle, patient voice he had learned to use during these moments. "It's okay, Lou," George was saying. "Just sit here for a minute. Remember what Mummy said? Sometimes your brain just needs a little rest." Kate's heart swelled, watching her eldest son care for his younger brother with such natural grace. This was what she had hoped for, that Louis's condition would be met with understanding and support, rather than fear or pity. As the day wore on, the palace received hundreds of messages from well-wishers around the world. Families dealing with similar conditions shared their stories and offered support. Medical professionals praised the family's decision to speak openly about neurological conditions in children. The response was overwhelmingly positive, but Kate found herself emotionally drained by the intensity of public attention focused on her youngest child. That evening, as she was helping Louis with his bedtime routine, he asked the question she had been dreading. "Mummy, why are people talking about me on the television?" Kate had prepared for this moment, but actually living it felt different than she had imagined. She sat on his bed and pulled him close. "Remember how we talked about your special brain that works a little differently than other people's?" She began carefully. "Well, today we told people outside our family about it, because sometimes when people understand about differences, they can help and be kind." Louis considered this seriously. "Like when Charlie in my class wears glasses because his eyes need help seeing?" "Exactly like that," Kate smiled, relief flooding through her. "Your brain just needs a little help sometimes, just like Charlie's eyes need glasses." "And people still like Charlie," Louis observed. "Yes, they do. And they'll still like you too." As she tucked him in and kissed his forehead, a gesture that had become even more tender and meaningful since his diagnosis, Kate whispered, "You are perfect exactly as you are, my love. Never forget that." Later that evening, Kate and William watched the late news coverage of the announcement. The reporters were respectful, medical experts provided educational context about neurological conditions in children, and there was genuine warmth in the way Louis was discussed. "We made the right choice," William said quietly, taking Kate's hand. "Look at the conversation this has started. Other families won't feel so alone now." Kate nodded, though part of her still ached at the loss of their privacy. But as she read through some of the hundreds of supportive messages the palace had received, she began to see the positive impact their openness could have. One message, from a mother in Yorkshire, particularly moved her. "My daughter has a similar condition and has always felt different and alone. Seeing that even a prince can have these challenges makes her feel less scared about her own brain being special." Thank you for giving her hope." Over the following weeks, the public response continued to be supportive and educational. Charitable organizations focused on neurological conditions saw increased donations and awareness. Medical researchers reported greater interest in studying similar conditions. Most importantly, families around the world felt less isolated in their own journeys. Louis seemed largely unaffected by the public attention. His days continued to revolve around toys, stories, and playing with his siblings. His treatment was progressing well, and his episodes were becoming less frequent and less severe. 3 months after the announcement, Kate found herself reflecting on the journey as she prepared for a charity event focused on children's neurological health, a cause that had taken on deep personal meaning. Louis was thriving. Their family had grown stronger through facing challenges together, and they had been able to turn a difficult situation into an opportunity to help others. That morning, as Louis took his medication without complaint and chattered about his plans to teach his elephant how to do somersaults, Kate realized that her greatest fears about the public announcement had not materialized. Louis was still their joyful, spirited little boy. His condition was simply one part of his story, not the defining chapter. The tender kiss she gave him that morning, like every morning since his diagnosis, carried with it all her love, all her hopes, and all her determination to ensure that he would grow up knowing that being different was just another way of being wonderful. The palace announcement had confirmed their commitment to openness and authenticity, but more than that, it had confirmed their unwavering love for their extraordinary son.